right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out.
The brain stuff and the training stuff, you know, with my clients, it is a chance for them and for you and for us to check out, but be present, because it totally keeps you into what you're doing, but you're in a lot of ways checking out from all the other stuff you got going on in your life, because you're focusing on working out or these brain drills or eye drills. And you know, so like that woman that I'm just started training that I was telling you about, super stressed out.
Yeah.
You know, for her, when our sessions, she's like, these sessions just like fly by because I'm so like into what we're doing.
Okay.
And she's not thinking about all this other stuff. And she's like, I took a boxing session, and she's like, it felt like it lasted forever because it was like, you know, just do a bunch of stuff. There was no kind of focus on what you were doing. It was just like go, go, go. But anyways, yeah. And then sleep. You know, obviously very, very critical to health and wellness and fitness and performance. But then, you know, with you too, it's interesting seeing it's a little bit of the heart rate variability for you with the hormonal stuff, because some days, you know, you're just better able to train and your system is better able to train. So, you know, if you can be in tune with that, those are the days that
fascinating too is my heart rate variability is better when I sleep less. Very rarely is it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I always had that theory too. So there is actually the DEC2 gene, which it's a very small percentage of the population. It's less than like 8% of the population, but that percentage of the population that has it can get roughly about 6.25 hours of sleep without deleterious effects. Whereas the rest of the population needs 8.25.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I don't know if I have that gene, but I've always suspected it because I'm one of those people who's always done better. Like even as a kid, when I would get too much sleep, I would complain. My dad would be like, "Yeah, you're sleep logged."
I know it's interesting because like for me, I'm as long as I can remember, I don't sleep more than, you know, four hours without waking up, and then I can go back to sleep on and off, but
right.
I usually don't get more. It's like clockwork, pretty much 4 hours, and then I wake up at least more. Usually like get up, maybe pee, get a sip of water or something.
Yeah.
And then for the next 4 hours, it's off and on, off and on, off and on. So it's definitely, and I'm a night owl too. I've kind of been a night owl as long as like I can remember, and you know, a lot of it is just how I've changed my schedule, but definitely looked into more of circadian rhythm and you know, internal organs, and I've stopped, you know, eating earlier and giving myself more time, you know, because I used to just eat and go right to bed, and so you know, a lot of that stuff that just goes into what we were talking about yesterday, with just all the different facets of, you know, health and wellness, and really trying to look at everything. But I tried to start going to sleep earlier, because one of the things I've learned about myself is I will wake up early pretty much regardless. Like I'm not one of those people who can sleep till like 9-10 o'clock in the morning. Like, you know, that's when the sun rises, I'm up. But when you talk about circadian rhythm, this is fascinating too. I don't do well with waking up before the sunrise. Like I'm an early riser, but I'm not like it's dark out. And it doesn't matter how much sleep I've gotten. It messes my hormones. Like I knew, because when I was coaching at CrossFit and I would do the 4:30 or the 5 a.m. shifts, like it didn't matter how much sleep I actually got, the whole day I'd be in a fog. There's just something about waking up and it being dark, and it did not. Well, they say, I mean, too, with the sleep stuff, is that first thing in the morning is getting the sunlight in your eyes.
Right. Without sunglasses
and so waking up, and that's really how we should be doing, going to bed when the sun goes down, waking up when the sun comes up, basically. But that's, you know, obviously
modern life is not always.
I've done that. I did that at one point, actually, when I went to
boarding school. Before I went to boarding school, I got sent on a wilderness program.
Okay.
And so I went out to the Bend desert out in Oregon. Like we were like 50 miles north of Bend in like the middle of nowhere. And we were out there. I was out there for about a month. Just like we were in this cabin. We had to hike around. I had to do all this like basically manual labor and all this stuff. But out there, we were going to bed when the sun was going down and getting up when the sun was coming up. And it was like, it was,
Did you notice a difference in how you felt? And
honestly, every time I go camping, huge difference. It like totally resets me. And kind of what I found when I go camping now, it's not, obviously you're camping, you're hanging out usually by the fire, you've been whatever, but I go to bed much earlier when I'm camping, and it's usually like around 11 o'clock, between like 11 and midnight. And then I wake up around like 7 or 8, and that seems like perfect for me. It's like in an ideal world, like that's kind of what my body really likes. It's just as soon as I get home from camping, it's like I'm good for a couple days, and then all of a sudden I creep back into that staying up late, getting up late kind of thing. But and obviously too, something about being in nature and that really
and you're like living off the land, and it's definitely very different kind of lifestyle. Well, this might be a really interesting segue, since we had our technical difficulty yesterday and we're back. But with I would love to get your take on COVID, and this is a really good segue to that, because I know for me, like I was getting so good at like forcing myself to go to sleep earlier, and really putting myself on a schedule, and then the lockdown happened, and my body decided 2 a.m. was like perfect bedtime now. I would just be like, I started just like reading everything possible. I'm a pretty avid reader and consumer of information in general. Whether it be like videos or books or audio, whatever, but I'm reading articles, but when the lockdown happened, I like went into like tenfold and I couldn't sleep because I was so wired, or I just keep reading. So
interesting with the COVID. I mean, I think that obviously threw everybody for a loop, right? Like in terms of just schedule, the days, like, and even for me, I've been able to maintain a little bit of normalcy. I did take a huge hit in business. Obviously, they shut down the gym. When it was all first happening, I remember, obviously social media is a big part of this. This girl that actually a Pilates instructor who I knew from Equinox. She's on Facebook, the sky is falling, 2 million people are going to die. We're going to be in lockdown and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, lockdown, quarantine. I'm like, that's never going to happen. And literally like 2 days later, it's like, I go to the grocery store. It's a zoo at the grocery store. I can't even find a place to park. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I'm like, I'm not even going to go. I go home. Of course, like that day or the next day, it's like, okay, lockdown, quarantine, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And it's funny because, we talked about this or you brought it up yesterday. I've been thinking about that since yesterday. I mean, obviously, this has been on all our minds ever since the beginning. I mean, that was March, right? So 2 weeks to flatten the curve. This is how many months later now? But I mean, it's like, I mean, there's so much to get into. But in terms of like, I think the scheduling and that, it kind of threw everybody for a loop, right? Because all of a sudden, business is shut down. You got to stay inside. We're not really going anywhere. So now I feel like, everybody's schedules really got turned upside down. And so, for me, like I said, luckily I was able to maintain a little normalcy, still had about a handful of clients that I was like training at the park. And so I was getting out a little bit, but my days, like, next thing I know, I don't really know what day it is. I was definitely like, I kind of stay up late as it is, but I'm staying up later. What's funny though, what I feel like is with a lot of people is it kind of went in some ways, like kind of one or two ways. You either kind of started to do more, read more. Like I actually started working out more, even though I wasn't going to the gym. I was like doing more in my apartment than I would normally do, stretching more, filming videos, like reading, doing that type of stuff. And I think then there's the other side where I think people went just Netflix, sit on the couch, just eating, they call it the quarantine 15 or whatever, people gaining a bunch of weight. And so, yeah, I mean, the whole, and then I've talked to people who I had a client who, he started staying home more, and for him, this was like a great thing because now he's not going to the office as much. He's not stressed out. He's with his kid more. I mean, now granted, no fault to them. He's successful, but they live in a very nice house with a pool and a yard. So not one of the worst places to be stuck.
Right.
But I also, too, I'm not a parent, so I don't know what it's like being stuck with your 2 little kids 24 hours a day either, which, in a family relationship can probably be difficult, because I know that even as a parent and a husband and a wife and whatever, you're going to need some space. But the flip side of that was not being stressed out about having to go to the office. Like, his business actually didn't really suffer. And then there's other side. I had other clients who, one of my clients, his wife is like really kind of scared of what's going on, didn't want to leave their little bubble. His business is suffering. And so, there's those ramifications, which then lead to, in my opinion, all the other ripple effects and domino effects that I don't think we've still quite seen yet from the lockdown and from, what the damage to the economy, obviously. And it's, I don't know. And then we can get into the whole other side of the health point of this, the health standpoint of it, right?
I want to hear all of it. I'm really curious. Yeah, your take on all of this. I have a little sense of some of it, but I'd love to hear.
Well, it's funny because my mind is going like 1,000 different ways because there's so many issues with this to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So for me, from a health and fitness standpoint, from the very beginning, the guidelines, in my opinion, have not really, they've been misguided, I think, and they've been very counterintuitive. I think there's been a lot of misinformation from what was going to happen, what did happen, how bad it is, if it's not that bad, what we should actually be doing. And then obviously the collectiveness of it, the collective stress, the collective fear and worry. And then, the other thing when it starts to come, like I touched on, social media, where now it becomes this very vitriolic, this thing where people are like taking sides and feeling, so one way or the other way. And then really getting, it created this very bad, I think, storm of just personal conflict and not even personal, but also with your friends or neighbors or on social media, because we're social creatures.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, social distance. So you social distance, but yet we're still on social media. Everybody's giving their opinion. Everybody's freaking out. Everybody's insulting each other. I mean, we've dealt with this in our opinions on some of the social media stuff, but
Sure.
I just think that, like I said, I think that the guidelines have been very counterintuitive to what we know from a health and fitness standpoint. Telling people to stay home, to basically not go outside, to, now, before it wasn't wear masks. They didn't say anything about wearing masks. At first, we weren't supposed to wear masks. Only sick people were supposed to wear masks. Then they changed the mask thing. And I mean, all of this stuff, like the hospitals are going to get overwhelmed. Well, the hospitals didn't get overwhelmed. Well, the death rate, 2 million people are going to die. Well, that didn't happen. And then businesses shut down. So now you have all the ramifications of people losing their jobs, people not having money to pay their bills, not feed their families. So now you're compounding that stress. And then on top of it, people are gaining weight because obviously they're just sitting around, they're not working out, gyms are closed, you're not supposed to go outside. Like I said, the stress of everything is just compiling on. And then I lost my train of thought. Sorry, there was the depression and anxiety and prescription drug use and alcoholism and alcohol abuse and all of those things have gone through the roof.
Yeah, for sure.
And then people weren't able to get elective procedures and not be able to go to the hospital. And then people were afraid to go to the hospital. So now I've heard, and some of this stuff, the misinformation has been such a problem with the CDC and the WHO and the guidelines and what's actually happening and what's not happening. And I've even heard that more people essentially are going to die of other issues than COVID because of, like I said, suicide, depression, prescription use, alcoholism, not being able to go to the doctor and get that procedure that you needed to do, or foregoing that because you're afraid to go to the hospital or somewhere because you think you're going to get COVID or whatever. So it's just that there's so much, like, it's just, I don't know.
It's overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And like I said too, my mind's going 1,000 miles an hour with like all the pieces to this that we're still, California was one of the first states basically to lock down, right? We've had some of the strictest guidelines and the first to do all this stuff, and we've had some of the worst numbers, so that's the thing is like, okay, you look at, all right, how certain states handled it and how the numbers, have gotten worse. And then the media, the fear in the media has just been rampant. I mean, it really, and I haven't seen some of the numbers lately because honestly, I would say over the last month, I've really tried to just shut most of it off. If I see an article about it, if I see whatever, I just block it. I do whatever. Like I don't look at the numbers. To me, the biggest thing was the death rate. So all of a sudden they switched from, worrying about the hospitals and the death rate to now it was about the case numbers.
Yep.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. You're worried about the case numbers. And then it's like, oh, all these places, there's thousands of new cases. It's like, well, first of all, we started testing more, which of course, if you're going to test a lot more people, you're going to get a lot more, positive. You're going to find a lot more cases of it. My biggest concern has always been, or my things with the numbers has always been the death rate. Sure. So if the case number goes up and the death rate stays the same or drops, then that's what I'm worried about. I don't care about the case numbers. If we're testing more people, then we're going to find out more people probably have it or have had it. That's the other issue, right? We don't know how long has it actually been around for. We don't know how many people have actually had it and gotten over it, or how many people that even now got it at some point, never went and got tested, never went to the hospital, were never even reported as a number, and they recovered from it. So it just, to me, it's hard to make sense of sometimes. I've definitely tried to be more on the optimistic side, be more on the, like, the personal responsibility side. Life is full of risks. At a certain point, like, you're going to have to determine what those risks are, and you're going to have to make that choice for yourself. I'm very much, not to get too political, but I'm probably more libertarian than anything. I believe in kind of personal freedom and, freedom of choice and responsibility, and let me make my decisions. Obviously there's the side of it where, people argue where you're putting other people in danger, which is, a big part of the mask debate and a big part of the asymptomatic debate, which I've seen research that says asymptomatic people really aren't spreading it like they said they were.
Yeah, they came out and said that they were wrong on that asymptomatic carriers don't spread it. Yeah.
Right.
And that it can't be spread by aerosol. They also said that they were wrong about that. Yeah.
See, that's my other issue. Is it droplets? Is it aerosol? I've gotten into arguments with people with the mask thing. Yeah. And, again, going back to the mask issue where, first, it was, they never said wear a mask. They even said actually don't wear a mask. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, and one of my biggest problems with the mask is that it became this thing that you could just wear anything. It's like, well, wait a minute. So wearing a handkerchief or a cloth mask or a freaking knitted mask, like, how does that make any sense? So again, going back to, I guess, my original point, the misinformation, the counterintuitive guidelines, and all of that have just been so just misguided, in my opinion, and all over the place that it's like, well, of course people aren't really going to know what to do. And then you're going to get people so scared that they're going to dig in and take this hardline stance that all of a sudden now it becomes, again, that collective fear where people are clinging onto these groups to where, when you start looking at, I guess, the politics of it, of they feel like they're a part of, this group that is doing something for the greater good when it comes to like wearing a mask or staying home or social distancing or whatever. So now all of a sudden it becomes this like righteousness and this like, morality thing, that they're morally superior because they're following these guidelines and they're doing, what they're told, and it's for the greater good. And it's like, well, wait a minute, like, what does that even mean? And if we're looking at the greater good, a lot of people are suffering right now because of this. So I don't know. It's been, it's definitely been trying, I feel like, on all of us.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, I want to live my life, and then I talk to other people. I talk to a good like physical therapist friend of mine who he's kind of like, well, it's really bad if you get it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like there's also been plenty of cases where people get it and they don't even really get that bad. Obviously there's people who died from it,
Sure.
but then the adjustment of the death numbers too, of, okay, well, did they die because it was complications that, with other underlying conditions, or did they die specifically from the virus?
Right.
And so now obviously the number came out that people who've actually died just from the virus alone is actually very, very low.
Right.
Majority of people who've died have had underlying, are usually very old or much older, and have had 1 to 2 underlying conditions or comorbidities. So it's comorbidities. So it's, I don't know. I'm definitely, like I said, I don't agree with a lot of the guidelines. We're social creatures. We need to be getting out. This goes back to my nervous system point yesterday. We need to be getting out in the sun. We need to be moving. Right now is the time that we should be looking at our nutrition, looking at supplements, looking at sleep, looking at the nervous system, boosting our immune systems. There's been really, I think this could have been a really great opportunity, and I'm trying to do it, but I feel like we've dropped the ball where it's turned into just shut in, shut down, wait for a vaccine. It's like, well, wait a minute. What about all the other health? We have an immune system for a reason.
Right.
We evolved to battle diseases and viruses over the years, and viruses and stuff are going to mutate. We're never going to get ahead of them. They're always going to mutate. But what we have to do is, that build up our immunity. So then you go into the argument of herd immunity, right? And so then there's the question of, well, is that actually a thing? Does that work? Well, in my opinion, yeah. I mean, the whole point of us as a civilization over, thousands and thousands of years, we've had to build our immune systems and battle these viruses and disease and bacteria and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point of what I do and what we do is to help people build their immune systems, build their nervous systems, be better able to handle the stress of their environment, which means viruses and disease and whatever else, that comes along. And so, again, like I said, to me, it's been very misguided. I don't really agree with most of it. I get freaking out at the beginning and not really understanding what this is and maybe being cautious. But now that we're months into this and we have a lot of information, then, sorry, go ahead.
No, to your point, I think what's really interesting, I think what you were alluding to was that this could have been a really great opportunity to incentivize people to take ownership of their health. And I think that that's something, particularly actually in this country. I think there's a lot of things this country does very well. I think that that's actually something this country does not do very well. We have a pretty decent medical system, and our medical care is kind of taking care of the sick. We wait for something to go wrong, and we don't do a whole lot of preventative. I think it's changing. There is some, the culture is changing. I think people are taking more initiative, and there is more emerging. I don't even want to call it alternative health, but really just that hybrid of personal health and preventative health that is taking place. But I think this was a really great opportunity to really dive into that. And there are people, I don't deny that the virus is real. This is my personal opinion. I don't deny that it's real. I don't deny that there are people with comorbidities or vulnerable population who may have to take more precaution, and who the virus may be a greater risk for them. However, never in history have we ever quarantined the healthy and told people to shut in. And I think this was a time for people who are healthy to optimize their health, or people who are borderline, you know, to say, this is a really great opportunity. Maybe I'm not working. Maybe, you know, maybe there are other stressors, or, you know, stresses have either diminished or they've increased, but either way, schedules have shifted. And now
Right.
maybe there's an opportunity, it's a window for me to say, hey, what changes can I make in my lifestyle that might, you know, behoove me in the long run, and also help me build an immunity towards this virus? Because this virus is not going away. I mean, hopefully we will reach in herd immunity, you know, a vaccine, whatever it is. You know, there's also all these medications that, you know, there's so much politicization around, but that could have possibly been treatments, you know. So I think we will reach a point where the virus is not such a big concern for the majority of the population. However, that doesn't mean that it's going to be gone and that people should neglect their health regardless. So that, and that boils down to, you were saying like you're more libertarian, you know, and I think that health is something that obviously, you know, you and I both know that there's things that are beyond people's control, but there's a lot that's within our control. And I think people don't take a lot of personal responsibility for their health, and that this is a great opportunity, I think. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, I agree 100% that, you know, definitely well said. And I do feel like, you know, those of us in a lot of ways who are more optimistic, more growth mindset, more of that nature, looked at this as a time to, you know, maybe do some of that and do some reflection and look at ways that we can improve and whatever. And you know, I also, you know, think the flip side of that, you know, I understand some people, you know, there's probably been, you know, some very, very much, you know, or some very high stress and a lot more just, you know, demand put on them if they have kids and they're losing their job and stuff like that, which, you know, obviously could be, you know, an issue as well. But yeah, the whole, you know, the whole idea of, like you said, with how our health is in America is, I feel like, you know, being in LA, we're in a little bit of a bubble where people definitely take care of themselves a lot more, you know, health and fitness and wellness and a lot of that stuff, and functional medicine and holistic health, and you know, is a lot more prevalent. But, you know, I definitely felt like the again, back to my kind of original point, they weren't really, you know, the media, even like, you know, Fauci and some of these other doctors that are coming on, you know, it was never really about like what we can do, you know, for ourselves as kind of individuals to help, you know, boost our immune systems and to help, you know, make ourselves healthier. It's always been about fear and about, you know, and then obviously the
immune system.
What's that?
Fear, which weakens the immune system.
100%. And that goes back to stress, and that goes back to your mindset. And yes, and that's the thing is, you know, I just posted a quote yesterday. It's like, thoughts, you can basically think yourself into illness or recovery, you know. So again, you know, and they've proven through meditation, what we were talking about, you know, yesterday, through your mindset can totally alter your physiology and your chemistry and your hormones, and increase inflammation and increase disease and make you more susceptible, weaken your immune system and make you more susceptible to these things. And, you know, again, that talk is I just feel like, aside from maybe, you know, us as health people and kind of in our bubbles, I just don't feel like, you know, that talk has really been out there. And, you know, to your point too, I think it's here, right? It's kind of here to stay. So what are we supposed to do? How long do you live your life like this? And like you said as well, we've never shut down like this. And, you know, one of the things that I've seen too, and again, maybe, you know, you got to be careful now where we get our information, because you see things a lot and don't know how true they are. But, you know, I was reading a thing with the tuberculosis where it was like 1.5 million people died of tuberculosis. And no one says a thing about that. No one even talks about that. And it's like, why this virus has become so politicized and so, you know, driven into the fear of society and made us, you know, to feel like we have to hide away and we need a vaccine and life can never be normal again. Right. I don't know. I don't get it. And I even saw a thing where it said that, you know, 30% of people would never go to a gym again, that they're
What?
so scared. Yeah,
That's
it was
a large percentage.
yeah, yeah. And this was like a couple months back. It was like a survey of, I don't know how big, the sample size was of the
Right.
survey, but I don't remember exactly. But it was asking people about the gym. It was kind of giving them like 3 choices or 4 choices, like, would you go back to a gym? When would you feel safe going back to a gym? Like something else, would you never go to a gym again? It was like 30% of people said they would never go to a gym again. And it's like, and then I have another study, and I have that saved on my phone, and they sampled, it was like, I want to say it was like 50,000 people or something of gyms. And it was like a very, very, very low percentage of people that actually got COVID from a gym. Like 0.000 something percent. It was like amazingly low. So, and then that goes back to the argument too, where, I'm sure you've seen it, where it's like liquor stores were open and these other things were open, but gyms are closed. So
I have to tell you, I made this joke to my mom because, gum disease runs in my family. So I get dental cleanings very often. That's like one of the ways I stay on top of it.
yeah.
And, I do my oral hygiene and all of that also, but I also do like more than the average, cleanings, regular cleaning. And so I had a schedule, and they postponed it for months on end, right? And I kept telling my mom, I'm like, I think they figure like, because they were like, well, we're not essential, so we have to be shut down. I told my mom, I said, well, liquor shops and donut shops are essential. So I think they figure my teeth are going to be so rotted and I'll be so drunk that I won't notice that they're falling out. And that's their line.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to laugh because I was just like, yeah, my dental cleaning, to stave off disease is not essential, but liquor, donuts, really, really essential.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like, well, just get everybody drunk and fatten them up, and don't forget about the fact that, they're just stuck at home and they're not working. And I mean, to your point too, with the elective thing, my dad my dad and my mom have both needed dental work. They've pushed them back for months and months. And dental work is important. Your mouth and your teeth.
It's very
for
correlated to your heart. Yeah. Your dental health, oral health. Yeah.
If you look at the chart of your teeth and Chinese medicine and some of that, your teeth and all that correlate with all your organs, your heart, your lung, like all that. And I know because I've actually had some teeth issues as well. And that was the thing. Like I was having a major toothache. I actually ended up having to have a root canal during this.
Oh, wow.
And one dentist that I went to, this is kind of when it first started, is like, I didn't even have a mask. And he's like, I don't really care, but if you go other places, you're gonna need a mask. And then luckily when I went to Arizona actually over the summer to go camping, and I saw a dentist there, and their dentist office was like, we're prepared. We've been prepared for any type of COVID, HIV, whatever. We're always prepared for that thing. So they're always open. They got me in. They dealt with me fine. It was great. No issues. But it's interesting how, those, again, going back to those elective procedures that a lot of people had to forego because of, this whole scare of what is actually happening and how you can get it, where you're going to get it, how many people are going to die. And so, back to my other point of like, people suffered, their health suffered even more from that, or they died from it. They died from not being able to get these procedures to go to the hospital or whatever. And so, I still don't think we've seen the ripple effect quite yet. They're talking about, I think it's 80% of like single owned restaurants or like family owned restaurants are going to go out of business. 80% is something like 50% of small businesses are going to close their doors for good. And then, to your point and what we're talking about with, okay, Walmart's open, the big stores are open, but the mom and pop shops have to close. And it's like, so, it just doesn't, none of it really has made sense to me. It still doesn't make sense to me. Again, like I said, I'm willing to take the risk. I want to go to the movie theater. I want to go do things. I want to go to concerts. Like, I want to live my life, but and I'm doing all the things that I can to help myself with that. I'm taking care of myself health wise and boosting my immune system. But you know, so.
So I have a question for you. You said that you're more libertarian in your beliefs politically. Has that always been the case, or do you feel like COVID has, or the reaction to COVID has in any way shaped your kind of worldview, your political views?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think for the most part, like, I didn't really, as a kid, you just kind of know what maybe your parents were at some point. So it's funny, as a kid, my parents were Democrats, and
Mm-hmm.
then they switched to being Republican because they're small business owners.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they started seeing, fiscally and just from a small business standpoint was, just how much better essentially Republican ideals and legislation stuff is just better for small businesses.
Right.
And so it's funny, as I, moved out to California, I didn't really have much political, I wasn't Republican or Democrat. I really didn't even pay attention.
Right.
And it was kind of towards the end of Bush's second term that I was kind of like starting to pay attention. Then when Obama came in is when I really started paying. It's because I think got of that age anyways, where
Sure.
politics, you start becoming more interested in politics.
Right.
But I feel like, given kind of my history, what I did was, I grew up in a smaller town that was definitely more conservative, not necessarily a lot of diversity. I mean, there's Hispanics and Mexicans in where I'm from, and not really a lot of black people, not really a lot of gay people that you really like made themselves known to be gay, because I think it was obviously, a stigma in a small town like that in the 80s and 90s. But when I went to boarding school and started being around other races and cultures and stuff like that, and then I moved out here, which is obviously, very diverse, very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, I think where a lot of like kind of my libertarian views and whatever kind of formed out here and growing up, because I just look at, like, again, to me, it's personal in responsibility, right? An individual kind of responsibility and individual freedom. As long as you're not out harming other people, with your beliefs, or you're not, pushing these agendas and doing these things, like, I really kind of don't care what you do in your home. If you want to, if you're gay, if you want to, and honestly, I take this stance with drugs too, and maybe a lot of people won't agree with this, but I personally think all drugs should be legal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they should be obviously, regulated to some degree. I think that, if because, the drug war, the drug laws, all that, that's, a whole nother issue. But again, there was kind of this quote, and there's a few of them going around, like, I'm pro Second Amendment, but I'm also, I was an advocate for like medicinal marijuana and legalizing marijuana. I've done, I've done hallucinogens in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked into those type of things. I'm also very fiscally conservative. I actually, I grew up somewhat kind of socially conservative in terms of being like, I was baptized a Catholic. I had to go to Sunday school. I had to do that. I think a lot of that kind of pushed me the other way at one point.
Right.
And then I kind of came back around where now, I definitely, my spirituality and I guess my faith, like, it's not quite, I'm not Catholic, and I don't know, I'm still kind of wrestling with what I believe in terms of like God and that. I do believe there is a higher power. I believe in energy and frequencies in the universe. And, so, my political beliefs, it's like, if you're gay and you want to get married, you want to own a gun, you want to smoke weed, you want to, like, I guess I would say I'm liberally, social liberal and kind of fiscally conservative in a sense. But I also believe that, again, going back to the personal freedoms and personal responsibilities, I don't want people or the government coming in and telling me what I can and can't do, what I can and can't say when we start talking about speech, freedom of speech, trying to shut people down for having different viewpoints. I'm all for, like, I want people to we should be able to have discussions and be able to have debates. I took debate in school, and I love having, I love having those debates. What I feel like now is there's no more debate anymore. Nobody wants to listen to anybody anymore. And everybody's so dug in in this right or left, and liberal and conservative or Republican or Democrat, that a lot of times there's no middle ground.
Yeah.
And I think social media has just made that way worse because, when I talk to people in person, there's no way, and I've made this point, on social media, that like if we were face to face, you wouldn't talk to me this way.
Right.
We would be
and
having.
If you would, you're someone I want nothing to do with.
Right. Who does that in real life? Who goes into like a grocery store and starts calling everybody a racist and yelling at them, and like, only fringe people do that. And when you see videos of people doing that, clearly there's something emotionally unstable about them, or there's some issues that they need to be working through. Like most of us grounded, centered, healthy people don't act that way, and are able to have civil conversations face to face, and aren't getting in people's faces and screaming at them, because they have a different political. Yeah. Well, and I think too, that a part of, that's pushed me now more towards, because we're kind of having to pick sides, seeing, the movement obviously that's gone on with BLM and a lot of that stuff. It's definitely, I said this in the very beginning, I support Black people. I support police reform. I support protesting. That's the thing. We have a First Amendment. You can protest. I don't care who protests. The more I have a problem is where you start demonizing one protester over another. And we see this a lot in the media where I feel like, and again, this is my somewhat subjective view of, I see people who, maybe align a little more with my, like, Second Amendment people.
Yeah.
They're the whole thing where they were, I can't remember what state it was, but they were protesting to stop the lockdown, and a lot of them had guns on them, which is their legal right to open carry. They got demonized for that. And then you see the BLM, and of course they're allowed to protest, go to the streets, that's fine. But when you start, looting and rioting and creating violence, and that's
burning things down,
that's just like okay, or kind of just ignored, that's where I start having a problem with this stuff. And it's, again, I want people to be able to speak their voice. I want to hear all opinions, and I've tried to be much better at seeing the other side of things. When right away I don't agree, I go, well, wait a minute, let me put myself in their shoes. And I've gotten so much better at that, to be able to kind of step back and go, all right, maybe I could kind of see, where they have a point here. Maybe I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see where, hey, all right, maybe that they feel that way given their experience. But, there comes a point now where I guess some of it too for me is pushback, because obviously I'm a white male, and I feel like, I'm not going to play a victim, because I'm not a victim at all. But it's kind of very funny now to me how it's like all of a sudden masculinity is toxic. White men are basically the racist problem, and there's becomes this whole narrative that, I think a lot of us, what happens is when you get it shoved in your face enough times, and people who don't know you are calling you a racist and calling you all these things, you start to want to push back. You start to want to kind of stand up for yourself. And I've never been good with authority. That's why I think I'm libertarian as well, because I've never liked anybody telling me what to do. I got in trouble in elementary school because I would talk back to my teachers, because to me, respect is earned, not given. And if I don't care who you are, even if you're a teacher or you're whatever you are, if you disrespect me, then I'm not going to stand for that. I'm going to push back against that. And it's gotten me into trouble before, and I've learned how to balance it and kind of understand the pushback, and really trying to figure out, all right, when is it appropriate to push back? How much should you actually push back?
right.
But again, I guess that goes back to, like I said, I've never been great with authority as a kid. So I guess as a kid, I've probably always been, I'll make my own choices. Don't tell me what to do. I'll suffer the consequences.
Right. Well, I think that's a huge part of the puzzle that a lot of people don't quite understand. It's not just, freedom. It's that, I'm willing to take risks and suffer whatever the consequences of my actions are. That's the flip side of it. And I think that's the part that, people either don't understand or they don't want. And that's why they choose the alternative. Yeah, you can be taken care of and have no freedom. You have no responsibility, but then you're trapped. You're really a slave. So that's yeah.
Well, that's kind of the whole point with a lot of what's going on is nobody wants to kind of take responsibility in a lot of ways for their actions. They want to blame somebody else, or they want to be victims, and there's the whole psychological aspect of that, which is what he talks about. I was mentioning the placebo effect and other things that I've seen is this collective consciousness. If you tell a group of people enough times that they're a victim and that they're less than, or that they're this, then yeah, there's a good chance that they're probably going to believe it and cultivate that attitude around this idea that they are less than, or that they are a victim, or that they should feel this way,
Or the opposite. They're going to really push back. I mean, I know for me personally, one of the things that I hate is when people try to lump me into, they try to shame me, telling me, well, as a disabled person, you should X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, how dare you reduce my value as an individual to being part of some group that you want to champion their cause?
Right.
That's
nothing about me. There's an irony and a hypocrisy to it of people are judging other people and then telling them not to judge other people.
Yep.
Basically telling you that you have something, that because you're this way, you can't experience what I've experienced. Well, it's like, but you haven't experienced what I've experienced. So you're lessening my experiences and judging me and generalizing me because you're pigeonholing me into this group of whatever it is.
Yep.
And you're doing the exact thing that you're telling people not to do, which doesn't make sense to me. I mean, the irony and the hypocrisy in a lot of these statements and I'm bad about reading comments and going on social media and stuff. It's like, that's one thing that I want to work on. It's not really serving me a good purpose in some ways, because I spend too much time doing it. And I've gotten to the point now where there's a lot of times I'll write a response and I just won't post it, just write it out. And I'll be like,
I do that too.
It's just not worth the time, because I feel like now what's going to happen is most people, like I was saying before, there's no civil discourse. There's no conversation. We're not changing people's minds. It's very rare that people go, oh, that's a great point. Let me look into that, when they're so hard the other way, or when they're so hard-lined in their stance and their beliefs. And again, that kind of goes back to the hypocrisy of, well, if you're so open-minded and you're so whatever it is, then why can't you see it from my side? Why are you the one that has to be right all the time, and I'm the one that's wrong? And it's like, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. I'm willing to, and that's, I think, a big thing that I've learned as I've gotten older too, and I try to do is, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll apologize for it, or I'll admit it, or I'll whatever. And I'm more than willing to try to, learn from that mistake, or learn from kind of, where I was wrong, or admit I was wrong, and it's just, there's not really a lot of that. It's kind of unfortunate now with just, I blame social media for a lot of it, because people can, kind of hide behind their phone or their computer, and there's no repercussions for it. So,
which has been true for a while, but I think it's gotten worse during these past several months, because people are locked down. A lot of people, work environment, and, their routines have shifted, and I think people are spending actually more time on social media as a way of connecting, which is a blessing and a curse, because at least people are able to connect through social media, but it's not human interaction. As like the heart has an electromagnetic field. Being in person with somebody is totally different than being on screen, and even being on a screen like this, where you can see the other person, is totally different than just typing out. And in the beginning, I thought about, like, it's interesting what you were saying about how you would write something and then delete it, and there's value in that. And in the beginning, I thought, well, at least people are writing and they're communicating their work, because that's kind of a lost art. People really don't write much anymore,
Right.
but it's not like real writing, because people, they're not paying attention to grammar. They're writing like they talk, and I think they're even more unfiltered than they would be talking. So all the benefits you get from writing, from the written language, the like text, you kind of lose through social media.
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
Random.
that point too, it's also the ability as well to, you can kind of edit your thoughts, and you can kind of, the flip side of that is, I think people are getting more kind of brash or brazen in some of the things that they're willing to say, because of the, not even anonymity, but some of it is, but
Yeah.
there's plenty of pages that are, you don't know the profile, you don't know if it's real or not, because then you get into the whole thing of bots and AI, and how much of this are we actually interacting with other people. But then, yeah, and then the side too of like editing and stuff. So I could definitely write something and completely edit it, change it, whatever I want. Whereas if you're having a conversation like this, you're not editing your conversation,
Right.
and especially if you're face to face, goes back to what you said with that energy.
Yeah.
Now we're feeling each other's energies and frequencies. And so it adds a whole nother layer of the conversation to how you're going to react to that person, and how that conversation is going to go. And to your point as well, with the lockdown and everything, I think on top of everybody obviously having more time, I spoke a little bit about the collective fear and anxiety and stress, where that's now compounded. And some of that I think you've definitely probably seen in some of the protesting and whatever. There's a lot of pent up energy, and that's definitely not an excuse, in my opinion, to be like, oh well, we've been locked down, perfect storm. People are mad, they're going to go out and whatever. But I do think we are seeing that energy being played out in a lot of different ways, because of, again, the frustration, the stress, and the fear. Really, I think a lot of it has to do with fear. People are coming from an emotionally fearful place, not a place of calm logic, being steadfast, being able to kind of, just take a breath and really just be, not let their emotions control, their responses and their attitudes, in a sense.
Not be so reactionary. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts moving forward? Like, what do you see? Yeah, in, I guess, all the arenas. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question, because, like I said, with the going back to the training and
yeah,
that whole thing, like, obviously when all this happened, a lot of trainers, pivoted to online,
yeah,
right? So we had to make do with what we could do. And so I definitely, took some clients online. And obviously the gym shut down, and now people are fearful of coming back to the gym. And so, you're looking at, and then just the normalcy of life, right? Like, I think the fear's been instilled in, again, I'll go back to that 30%, right? That I think roughly around, not only just going to the gym, just in general, a fear of going kind of anywhere. I think probably 30% is probably a conservative estimate. It might even be more than that, of people that are afraid to go back to kind of any sense of normalcy, to go back to maybe wanting to go to a movie theater, right? Wanting to go to a concert, wanting to start living your life again, going, and then, the whole thing too with social interaction, people are now afraid to touch each other. We're all acting like we all have leprosy, basically, when you're around people. And I have to admit, even psychologically, I've been affected, where you think about touching a doorknob, you think about shaking somebody's hand, you think about being in a room with 3 or 4 people, of like, what's, and
I think
so,
you also think about like the hostility, and like how are they going to react? Like if you're wearing a mask, you're not wearing a mask, how close you're standing to them. Like, does somebody want to be hugged, not be hugged? Like all
right.
those things that I would never have thought about before, but I'm very conscious of. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I also don't want to be cold. So
Right. Well, and I think honestly, my opinion is I kind of want to be more of the one that just goes back to like, hey, let's just live our lives.
Right.
Let's hug. Let's do these things. You know, let's. I just want to. I want to kind of shut all that fear out, and I just want to. You know, I really kind of want to go back to just living my life again. And I'm getting to the point, honestly, now with like the masks and like going into businesses. Look, I don't wear a mask outside. I refuse to wear a mask outside. I think it's the stupidest thing. I will not wear a mask outside. The only reason I wear a mask inside of a business is out of respect of the establishment, and because given where we're at, I don't want, a bunch of Karens or a bunch of people to start getting in my face with their phone and yelling at me and creating this scene. But I'm honestly getting to the point where I'm getting fed up to where I just want to start. I kind of just want to start going in places without masks and just saying,
That's an interesting thing too with the mask, is that so few people, I don't want to say nobody, but so few people will acknowledge that there could be any detriment to wearing the mask, that there could be deleterious health ramifications from wearing a mask. They think it's like a harmless, like what's the big deal? It's inconvenient for you, but there are, right? Do you feel that way as well? Like that there's.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've kind of talked about this a little bit on social media, but I've looked up multiple studies, and I could debunk just about every mask argument there is, So one of the biggest arguments is kind of to your point, well, surgeons and nurses and whatever, they wear masks all day and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, actually, they don't. They, unless obviously a surgeon is in surgery, they use perfectly fitted masks. They don't reuse them. They use them for a minimal amount of time, then they get a brand new one. And
if it's a long surgery, they actually take breaks, mask breaks. Yeah.
And that's the thing too. So you look at, obviously they talk about, the CO2 in the air intake. Well, first of all, it's a breeding ground for bacteria. And most people, if you just look at regular people, they don't wear them right. They retouch them, they reuse them, they put them on their chin, which is one of the worst places because now you collect all that bacteria. Then you put it back on your face. Like I said, they're taking them off, they're putting them back on. And so the use of masks is grossly inappropriate for most people. They just don't know how to use them. And surgeons and hospital workers, they don't wear masks to protect themselves from viruses. They wear masks not to get their bacteria into an open wound or into, whatever they're doing. And I've read multiple studies that have shown that even the masks in clinical settings don't stop hospital workers from getting the flu and don't actually stop them from getting these viruses. They're really only stopping it so their bacteria doesn't get in to the patient or get, compromise their patients. It's not necessarily for them, really.
And it is mostly for open wounds. That is actually very much.
Right. It's not for viruses. Yeah. And not only that, then the whole argument of the micron size of the virus. The micron size of the virus is smaller than what the mask can filter, even the best masks. It's smaller than what those masks actually filter. And again, most people aren't wearing these really great N95 fitted masks. They're wearing bandanas. Or what I have, is a cloth mask. It's like a t-shirt. It's not going to do anything. And then the CDC comes out and says, with all the smoke, well, the masks aren't effective to filter the particles of the smoke. Well, the particles of smoke are way bigger than the virus. So if the mask isn't going to help me for particles of smoke, how is it going to help me for a virus that's a fraction of the size of these smoke particles? So, that whole, and again, it goes back to my original point of where it was, don't wear a mask. Only sick people should be wearing masks. Healthy people don't need to wear masks. Fauci said it. The CDC said it. Then all of a sudden it turns into everyone needs to wear a mask, and you can basically wear anything that you want. It's like, well, wait a minute. And I have multiple studies that show that cloth masks and like handkerchiefs and one of those are actually not effective at all. And to your point, what they really are is a breeding ground for bacteria that can cause other issues. And then if people have asthma, if they have anxiety issues, if they have these other things with a mask, then you're compounding those things. And then I don't know how true it is because I haven't seen too many reports, but this is, I got to be careful because it is kind of secondhand knowledge, but I've heard people who are driving around a masked in their car passing out.
I've heard this too. I have heard it. I don't have, clinical studies on it, but I've heard it, and I have heard it firsthand from people who work in the medical industry, people who are either in the ER or ER doctors, and I have heard them as well.
Yeah. And that, that's the thing to me. So what you have is this, and it goes back to kind of what we were talking about in the beginning. What you have is this whole notion that these unhealthy people, who are, a lot of them, are overweight, just wear a mask, stay inside, and that is going to keep you safe. Right. It's like, no, that's not going to keep you safe. You're unhealthy as it is. You're wearing the mask wrong. You're contaminating your mask. I've seen videos of it, and I've seen people in person with their gloves on in the store, touching things, then touching their phone, touching their mask. I saw a woman, she took her glove off, had her glove in her mouth, and was like, had her mask down, had her glove in her mouth, was like looking at her phone. And it's like, I've seen pictures and videos of people online eating food with their gloves on. So you're touching your food and eating it with the glove that you probably touched a bunch of other stuff with. And gloves are worse even. They're a breeding ground for bacteria.
Yeah.
So this whole, again, it goes back to kind of my original point in the beginning. The guidelines, the recommendations have been so all over the place, have been so counterintuitive to what we know from bacteria, from viruses, and from health and fitness. And, shutting down parks, shutting down, like I go out to the ropes and rings in Santa Monica all the time. Yeah. They've shut that down. They open it and then they shut it down. And so I've gone out there a couple times, and I've gotten kicked off twice now, because one time I jumped the fence and I'm working out. One time they didn't say anything. No one saw me. Yeah. A couple weeks ago I was out there, and a cop comes rolling by, and he basically starts, just giving me a bunch of shit. He's like, "You need to get out of there." And I'm the only one in there, right? I'm the only one in there. There's sun shining. I'm by myself working out. Yeah. And this cop comes up and starts basically harassing me, telling me that it's closed. You need to get out of there. And it's funny. He's like, "There's a fence up for a reason." He's like, "What do you think that fence is there for?" I said, "Well, to climb." And he's like, "No." He's like, "You're going to get a ticket." I said, "Why?" He's like, "It's a law." I said, "It's not a law. You guys, this isn't legislated law. No. These are actually unconstitutional mandates that really aren't enforceable." And that, again, goes back to kind of the libertarian and California with Newsom and Garcetti, and don't even get me started with that, with the unilateral actions that they've taken to just supersede what their actual responsibility and power is. Yeah. And so this cop, and so, I push back a little bit, but again, to my point before, is I've learned better now of when to push, when to push a little bit and be like, okay, that's enough. And so I pushed back a little bit. Yeah, I stayed over the fence. I was kind of giving him a little bit of shit. Jumped over the fence, and I'm still like, "Dude, how does this make sense?" I said, "Talk to me like a human being." He kept repeating the same kind of robotic phrase. "It's closed. Right. It's closed. You're going to get a ticket. It's closed for a reason." I said, "Why?" I said, "Tell me how it makes sense that me working out by myself, doing handstands, whatever it is, is a problem, but yet there's homeless people doing drugs and taking craps in the street and whatever else." And so again, this just goes back to, I keep kind of saying my original point of the guidelines and what they deemed essential and what they shut down and what they've kept open and what we should and shouldn't be doing is just, in my opinion, just nonsensical and just completely just ridiculous from a health and human standpoint of social interaction, getting sunlight, getting movement, eating well, being able to interact. It just, I don't know, just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So you're saying that so the gyms are being shut down. A lot of people are afraid to go back. Lots of trainers are working online. What do you think the future of the health and fitness industry is going to be? Do you think
I don't know. I still feel like people still want the one-on-one interaction. I've been hearing this argument for a while that personal training is dead, that it's all going to be online, and that eventually the one-on-one training, it's not sustainable. you need to go online, you need to do all this stuff. And it's like, I don't think that's true. I think, again, going back to what we've talked about, and one of my points is we're social by nature. We're a social creature. We want social interaction. People want to interact with somebody and spend time. And not only that, from a training standpoint, you can only do so much online. My online sessions are not as good as my in-person sessions.
I know.
I can't touch people. I can't cue them. I can't show them as well. It's not really the same. And a lot of times people, they have a small space. They don't have certain equipment. They're kind of, not that you need a ton of equipment because I love body weight, but there's some limits to that. So in my opinion, I think, obviously the fitness industry has taken a huge hit. Some gyms, some of the bigger box gyms have filed for bankruptcy. I think, a lot of these smaller gyms are unfortunately going to close and never come back. Studios have closed. But I still think that there are people that want this interaction. There's still people that are going to be going to physical therapists and massage therapists. There's still going to be people going to personal trainers. There's still plenty of people. When we did reopen at the gym, a lot of people, I did a small ad on Facebook. I had a lot of people that hit me up and a lot of people that wanted to come back to the gym. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are fearful that won't come back, and that's fine. But I still think there's a lot of people that understand the value, want that interaction, want a space to work out, want to be able to go to the gym. And so I think it will come back. Now, I don't know, to what degree, I don't know if it's going to take a year or 2 years where, then these studios start popping up again and cycling studios start popping up more. And but I think a lot of the bigger box gyms are going to close a lot of their doors. Obviously, some of these smaller gyms that just can't afford their rent because they don't really have anybody coming in.
Yeah.
But I don't see personal training as like one-on-one personal training. I don't think that's going to die out. I think that's going to continue, to go forward. But I don't know. I mean, I do think there's still a lot of people that are scared too. So.
Yeah. So I want to kind of wrap it up because you've been amazing. You've given me so much time.
I've talked
but no, you've been awesome. This is such valuable information. I hope it's really useful for everybody as it's been for me and really enjoyable for me. I want you to tell people a little bit about your supplements. You created your own supplements, right? So tell us about that, and then tell us where to find you, and and I'll post links too. But
cool. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate the time as well. Like, obviously, I'm passionate about this. I love to talk. I definitely kind of go on these rants and tangents sometimes, and I have to kind of rein myself back in. And I do hope people find this useful, like we've talked about before. If I can inspire one person or 1,000 people or 10,000 people, as long as hopefully this information has been helpful. And I love talking about this with like-minded people and someone like you with the good energy, and we can kind of have these conversations, and it's great for me to connect in this sense. And yeah, so the supplements, they spawned from a few things. One, like I had mentioned before, of kind of going through my own health issues, and I've studied nutrition for years and have some nutrition certifications, and obviously really started looking into the gut and health and wellness and the immune system. And we were talking about sleep. So this is a great segue. I actually am producing my own sleep supplement, which I'm very, very excited about. It's in production. I just emailed my supplement company. I'm hoping that it should be done in less than a month. I'm hoping we should be able to get it out in the next few weeks. So the reason I started my supplement company was a few reasons. One is because I feel like the supplement industry, it's huge, obviously, but it's lacking. There's a lot of products out there that are crap products, and that make a lot of claims, and that there's really no regulation, as you know, in the supplement industry. The only thing that the FDA regulates is what you can and can't say. They don't really regulate what's in the products. And so what I found is, what happens for a lot of people is they buy cheap, ineffective products because they're looking for these high milligrams and cheap cost, right? Which for me, one, the milligrams, just because it has more milligrams than the other supplement doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean that it's actually effective, because your body can only process so much of certain things. So I use the analogy, it's like a doctor, when they prescribe you a medication, they prescribe you the effective dose. They don't prescribe you this huge dose because, oh, well, more is better, let's just take more of it. That's not how it works. And so in my opinion, that's how supplements should work. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to create my own supplement company that I could control what was in it. I knew exactly what was being put in it. I could find quality ingredients. I could perfect these formulas that are effective and synergistic. And what my brand is more of a lifestyle brand. What I'm not trying to do as a supplement company is be like your typical pre-workout bodybuilding, like that type of supplement. What I'm trying to create is lifestyle products that help people that maybe they don't even necessarily go to a gym, or maybe they don't even necessarily, work out or whatever, but they want to live a healthier life. Right. And now with COVID, supplement, sales blew up, and people are, because again, people want the quick fix. So now they're trying to find other ways. And I do think proper supplements can obviously very much boost the immune system. And when we're talking about COVID, I've seen studies that said people who have sufficient amounts of vitamin D, are doing the zinc and the magnesium, are much less likely to succumb from the virus, or are much able to better fight the virus or recover from it.
Yep.
So, again, I wanted to make products that are more lifestyle oriented. So what I started with, I had two products. I had a nootropic or a nootropic brain supplement. Unfortunately, what happened with that was it's a really good product, and I had a lot of people asking for it. It expired, so we had to pull it from Amazon. I haven't been able to essentially refill the order, and I'm actually tweaking the formula. Okay. But right now I have a bone and joint supplement, so it's a comprehensive bone and joint supplement. Awesome. Obviously, it has your typical, MSM, chondroitin, and glucosamine. But what I also added was two very powerful anti-inflammatory ingredients, which are turmeric and frankincense. Right. Turmeric has been clinically studied for many years. It's been shown to reduce inflammation significantly, better than ibuprofen. And with the turmeric, what you need to do is you need to pair it with either fat or pepper, black pepper fruit, or piperine, which I've done in my supplement. Yep, because that boosts obviously the turmeric absorbability and gets it into your system better. And frankincense is another natural anti-inflammatory. I also put vitamin D in it as well, because I think it's like 80% of the population, at least in America, is deficient in vitamin D. Again, people are staying inside. They're afraid to go in the sun because there's this notion that the sun is bad for you, which is not.
There's a genetic predispositions to the absorption of vitamin D.
Yep, that too, that as well. Yeah. And
I have that. I get lots of sun, but no matter how much I supplement and how much time I spend out in the sun, like I'm always deficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, trust me, there is a genetic component. My sister, my mom all have it. Yep.
So what can you do then, essentially? What
I do supplement. I just have to supplement a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
Are you taking like a liquid or a capsule? Or?
Yeah.
Liquid. Yeah, I've gotten into some of the liquid vitamin D on top of my supplement, because I didn't want to put a lot in. It's only 25 micrograms, which is 125% of your daily intake. Sure. To where, a lot of these things, they're 2,000 IUs or 5,000 IUs, depending on how efficient you are and whatever. But
take more probably separately. That's
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. To me, my bone and joint formula, again, is more of a synergistic formula. It doesn't have like this huge amount of glucosamine. It has the right amount of all these ingredients that work together. And so that's kind of the point I made is I feel like, unfortunately, in the supplement industry, people think they need to buy these supplements with thousands and thousands of milligrams, and which is not the case for it to be effective. So, back to my point, I wanted to make a formula that I know was effective. I kind of modeled it. I've done my due diligence and my research on all these things, how they work together. I've looked at other supplement companies and some of the products they've put out. And so one of my product is actually very similar to Thorne's product. We use the same, we use the same human that they use. So Thorne uses Mariva, We use Mariva as well, which is a trademarked curcumin phytosome. It's 95%. It passes the blood-brain barrier. So I wanted to make sure, again, that I'm putting out a quality, effective supplement and a lifestyle brand. And so then that brings me to my second supplement now, which is a sleep supplement. So again, like we talked about before, how important sleep is. I feel like sleep is huge because most people, and I don't know the percentage, a very high percentage of people don't get enough sleep and they don't get quality sleep. And when you start looking at health and wellness and the brain, when we talk about neurology, sleep is how your brain clears waste. It's kind of the only way for the brain to recharge and kind of heal itself and clear waste. And so if you're not getting proper sleep, your brain cognitive function is going to suffer. Your hormones, cortisol, a lot of that's going to be messed up. Now, obviously, with the blue lights and the computers, we're up later. We have blue lights. We're not getting sun in our eyes. Our circadian rhythms are all off. So sleep is something. People are just pumping caffeine and coffee, and they're stressed out all day, and cortisol is getting all messed up. We actually need cortisol. It's just being messed up given
getting
what's
reversed for a lot of people.
Yeah, totally. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a quality, safe, and not like a super crazy sleep supplement. I wanted to make it somewhat mellow but effective. And so it's a liquid supplement, which I wanted to make. I wanted to get away from the capsules. I wanted to make something liquid so it's more absorbable.
Sure.
And so basically what it has in is it has zinc. It has magnesium threonate, which is a brain precursor magnesium, because there's I think what a lot of people, people may be listening to this and us realize there's different substrates of vitamins and minerals. So vitamin B, vitamin, B12, zinc, magnesium, they all have different substrates, and those different substrates affect the body differently.
Right.
And so I've researched into magnesium threonate. Magnesium threonate is very much for the brain. It has less of a laxative effect of like a citrate, and it still has the calming effect, but it's actually much better for the brain. So I wanted to do zinc, magnesium threonate, vitamin B6, which again is another relaxant and good for the brain. A lot of people think the B vitamins are for energy, which they are, but that's actually more B12. But they're actually really good for the brain. Right. And then the basically the last thing that I put in it was tryptophan. And so what do you think of when you think of tryptophan?
You think Thanksgiving, turkey, sleepy.
Exactly.
In that order.
So that's why I put it in, because everybody that I told that I put tryptophan in there, they go, oh, like turkey, like the stuff that makes you tired. So I did that for 2 or 3 reasons, really. I'll give you 3 reasons I did the tryptophan. Okay. One reason is kind of the marketing idea and the belief and the attitude that tryptophan is associated with turkey, and it's associated with sleep and relaxation. The other reason that I wanted to put tryptophan in is it's a little more mild than melatonin.
Right.
So a lot of people, in my opinion, or not my opinion, I've heard, and for me, melatonin actually doesn't really work for me. Melatonin really doesn't do much for me. And the problem with melatonin is most people actually take too much melatonin. They really need a much smaller dose than what they're taking. And then the other thing that I've heard with some people is it can give them really crazy dreams. And I've actually had some people say that they can wake up groggy. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, melatonin works for plenty of people, and valerian root works for plenty of people. Yep. And I've done valerian root myself. Valerian root gave me really wild dreams. Yeah. And so I'm not as big of a fan of valerian root. So anyways, that's why I put tryptophan in, because of the attitude and the belief around that, the marketing point that, hey, people, they think turkey, they think sleep, and then it's a milder form of kind of a sleep sedative, natural sleep sedative, than what would be melatonin or valerian. Right. So I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for that to come out. It should come out soon. We have one flavor right now. It's strawberry lime flavor. It tastes great. I went through the sample process. They were sending me samples of dialing in the formula, dialing in the taste. We're only using allulose and monk fruit. so your body doesn't process allulose like sugar.
Right.
It's essentially sugar free to the point where a dose doesn't warrant enough that you're not going to absorb it like the allulose. It's not absorbed like glucose,
Right.
and there's so little in it that it's it would be technically less than a gram. It's so little in it that we can put 0% sugar on the label, which is another important thing to me, because how you sweeten something definitely has an effect.
Sure.
And so a lot of supplements now that we're getting into liquid supplements and gummy supplements, they're putting sugar in them. So if you're trying to
insulin, which affects your cortisol, because they're inversely correlated. So yeah.
Exactly. And if you're trying to go to sleep and you eat a couple grams of sugar, well, it could have that effect to where it's not really going to be what you want it to be. So spike the insulin, kind of messes with what you're actually trying to do. So anyways, that's I'm at hftsupplements.com. That's my website. We're working with a new marketing company. We were kind of rebranded. We got the new website up. I'm still on Amazon, but we're kind of shifting to more person to person. I'm trying to get people to, I'm set up to buy directly from my website, just because Amazon has been a nightmare to work with. They've screwed us over a couple times. They've pulled our product without telling us. They're constantly changing the rules. They're constantly, flagging people and shutting people down, small companies like me, for absolutely no reason. And like I said, not telling us. So at one point they shut us down. We lost a huge ranking. We were shut down for over a month before they actually put us back up. We had to jump through all these hoops to get back up. And then what Amazon is also doing is they're coming in now and making their own supplements and undercutting everybody. They're making their own products and charging like $2 less than what like your popular brand would be. So I've switched over to my own website, hftsupplements.com. The HFT is for hybrid fitness training. All of my supplements, I have hybrid bone and joint, I have hybrid sleep. Again, they're lifestyle products. They're for people who want to boost their immune system, because right now zinc and magnesium are very important, given, what's going on with the virus. Sleep is very important. The stuff that I have in my bone and joint, vitamin D is very important. The turmeric, the joint support, and even the joint support like glucosamine and some of those things, they actually help your gut and they help other things than just your joints. So again, sorry for the long-winded answer.
Great.
But quality supplements, effective supplements, wanted to make sure that they're made in a good manufacturing practices factory. The factories are NSF certified. I did my due diligence. I made sure if I'm this is my baby. This is a passion of mine. This is my thing. I made sure that if I do something, I want to do it right. And so, that's where I'm at with this. And I'm really super excited for that sleep supplement. I'll give you a bottle to try. I'll send you a bottle.
I'd love it.
I want to get it into the hands of my fitness friends and people that I know, because I really want some feedback on it. I think it will really help me too, to see, like, I know it works for me. I was getting samples and I was taking it, and I really loved it, and I've been missing it. So I've had to kind of supplement with some other stuff, in the interim. But I'll send you, or I'll get you a bottle, as soon as I get it, I'll give you a bottle to try. So, and then, all my social media stuff is all basically hybrid fitness training. So Instagram is hybrid fitness training. My website is hybridfitnesstraining.com. My YouTube is hybrid fitness training. The only thing that's different is my Facebook page, which is Hybrid Fitness Training LA. So that's,
so I'll post a link to that. Everybody definitely check him out. He's awesome. Cool. And he does really awesome stuff too. He's fun to watch. So thank you so much for joining. It was amazing. Thank you so much.